But when it actually comes to who are we going to speak to and put on our pitch list, 90% of companies will have 3 in mind. So there's a number of different ways that we can, I guess, quantify that instant impact. What's the platform that that's sitting on? And how does that differ across your different buyer audiences and the different sectors that you're interested in?
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we dive into the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful brands with comprehensive hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Today, we have a very special guest. We're joined by Jenny Mowat, the CEO of Babel PR and a powerhouse in B2B tech communications. She's helping cybersecurity and enterprise tech brands rise above the noise, and she lands on pitch lists where it counts. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you as well. All right, so let's start with your backstory, your origin. How did you get into this?
You know, it's a funny story because I studied history at university. I'd always loved writing and story creation and narrative making. And it's funny that the irony is that's now a big part of my job. But I always knew I wanted to do something in comms, but I didn't really know what. So I looked at advertising, branding, marketing, and PR, and essentially fell into a grad scheme role at a medium-sized PR agency in London. But interestingly now, actually, a lot of what I do is that full marketing mix. So we're a full service mix agency at Babel, and advertising, branding, marketing, PR, all those areas that I was originally interested in, we now do, but through the tech lens.
Yeah. And actually, I think history is a brilliant way to approach it. One of the quotes that I love is, "Those who do not read history are doomed to repeat it." So
It's very true.
There's almost an engineering aspect to that.
Yeah.
If you know what has happened in the past, if you know historically what has worked out for the world and what hasn't, I think that gives you a really unique lens and a unique spin in which you can be prepared for the future.
I'll take it one step further though, because every week we had to write like a 2,000-word essay with 15 sources. And then you'd essentially have to sit and pitch it to my supervisor on why you'd taken a certain argument and an angle. And if it wasn't strong enough, blimey, she would pick it apart. And it basically means like pitching media analysts and even like big CEOs of massive listed tech companies that we're working with. It's really kind of got me ready to do that a lot more. It's like, what's my argument? What are the angles? Where's my research and my data that backs it up? And it's been actually such a good grounding.
Yeah, I hope you wrote her a thank you letter. I feel like that's one of those experiences when you're young, you're like, oh my God, again.
I know. Was it
and then it actually becomes massively helpful.
Scarring or helpful? Don't know. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah. So you've uncovered how cybersecurity companies can stand out in very saturated markets. What's some of the insight that surprises even you?
Is this from our own data or generally? Like which one are you most interested in?
I would love to hear both. I mean, start with what you think is the most important thing for us to know.
I think cybersecurity growth is huge. I mean, you have to open any news site to see that the number of companies, particularly in the UK, we've just had like all the big retailers have been held hostage under ransomware for weeks and weeks. And this is something that's not going away, but it's an incredibly complex side of technology. The buying cycles are short and sharp. There's a number of different tools on the market, but growth is high. Like our own data report showed that for UK companies, they're investing over £500,000 a year. And in the US, we've got 41% of organizations that we surveyed are spending over $600,000. And that's just at the base level. So it's a huge growth market. But you're competing with, on average, about 130 discrete cybersecurity products in the market that enterprises are using. So it's huge.
Yeah.
So buyers are looking for trusted sources and insights. And our study found that the spheres of influence are actually quite narrow. They're looking at analysts, so industry analysts for opinion and also word of mouth from their peers. But what's interesting for me in particular is how they're using and consuming media to inform their decisions. A lot of our clients are like, get me in the nationals, get me on the TV. I want to be world famous. And that's got the biggest reach. And yes, the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, they hold a lot of heavyweight. They also rank really high on Google. That's great. but it's particularly great for if you're looking at investment or shareholders and a broader C-suite decision maker audience that you're trying to reach. But actually, in the cybersecurity space, if it's IT decision makers or chief information security officers or security, anything to do with regulation and compliance, it's actually the trade media that holds the biggest weight, and podcasts, interestingly. So you'd be pleased by that one. But it's a high growth of that particular target audience are consuming in-depth articles in trade specific security media. That's where, and that holds a lot of weight over their decision-making process.
Mm-hmm. So just to piggyback on that question, I do know a lot of companies out there that feel like they need to get exposure and they need to get those likes, that they need
and
to
they
get
want
on
it
LinkedIn.
yesterday.
Right. Yeah. But I think one of the problems that they face is that if they go with the wrong PR agency, or they may end up with a lot of interesting exposure, hundreds or thousands of likes and comments, but that doesn't actually move the needle. It doesn't get the deal done. Which, as I was hearing you say the end of that, what you're talking about, how do people know when they're only getting vanity media, vanity exposure? And how do they know when they're getting the type of exposure that's really going to move the needle and get them new clients?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. There isn't a silver bullet for getting this right when it comes to measuring the success. I sometimes think if you're in media buying or you're in paid, it's a bit more tangible to show the instant results there and then, and what exposure it's had, what reach it's had. We find that often the buyers, if we're thinking about the buyers and their mentality, particularly for an enterprise tech, so not cyber is a bit shorter, but longer, more broader tech, like if you're replacing your CRM or your cloud provider, it could be anything from like a year to a 2-year sales cycle. So it's long term. But when it actually comes to who are we going to speak to and put on our pitch list, 90% of companies will have 3 in mind instantly. It's like gut feel. But how do you become one of those 3? So that consistency of message across all channels is key. Being memorable in the right places. So we talked about the power of trade media, but also I think being findable. And that is something that we can measure as an agency. We can look at share of voice. So how are you faring against your competitors? We can look at if we've done a big news story, say a funding announcement or a new product, what difference has that had on your Google search? Are people looking for you more? Are they coming to your website? Is there a spike in traffic around the time of the news announcement? Are there actually more sales converting at that time? And are they tagging PR or I read about you in an article as the lead? So there's a number of different ways that we can, I guess, quantify that instant impact, but it's about ensuring that your buyers seeing it and hearing about you on a consistent basis. Because if it's another 2 years before they're actually going to be purchasing a new tech solution, you need to keep that up for those 2 years. And the instant gratification of where are my likes or where's this or why haven't we got a sales lead immediately? It's one part of a process to get to the end of that long cycle.
Yeah.
Sounds very negative, doesn't it?
It really doesn't, only because I've seen this actually work and I really understand the power of iteration and I understand the power of failing forward, And so, for people who first come to it and are like, okay, well, what can we do tomorrow? And you're like, well, tomorrow we can get started on the journey, but the journey is going to take a couple of years,
I know. I don't think I'd win many clients if I said that every time.
Right. But it's if somebody came to you as a weight loss, because they wanted to get fit and they want to develop more muscle, and you are a personal trainer, and because you're personal training their media, right? But like if somebody came to you tomorrow and was like, well, I want to lose 40 pounds, and you're like, great, well, the journey's going to take a couple of years. We're not going to do it tomorrow, but we're going to start tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think
and
people would be a little
it's
more
exactly
forgiving.
the same thing of like consistent good practice, good behavior, and I guess good hygiene factors, like actually starting from scratch, like before we even go out with anything, what's the brand messaging and what's the platform that that's sitting on, and how does that differ across your different buyer audiences and the different sectors that you're interested in? Okay, so we've got that right. Now, where are the people that are in those different sectors? What are they consuming? What social channels are they on? What videos are they watching? And really looking at their whole, I guess, existence and media consumption, both personally and professionally. You've got to remember, like, you're selling to humans, you're not selling to robots yet. So, you want them to find you on everything that they might be reading or consuming, but also on things like ChatGPT and Gemini. Like, you need to be findable.
Yeah. So right now, what are some of the red flags that you see before you've worked with a client and you say, okay, aha, you could probably use my help? What are some of the biggest mistakes that they're making?
Very product focused communication is probably one of the biggest blocker, and thinking that that's new news. There is that, don't get me wrong, particularly where your customers are concerned or your partners, like they want to know about those new product upgrades, but specifically they want to know what does it do for them, their business, and their business's users. So often we find like companies come and work with us and say we've not had much luck with another agency, like the coverage numbers are low or it's not converting into sales. And we'll say, okay, well, let's look at what you're classifying as news or commentary and why it's not getting traction. And often it's just too self-serving in a way, I guess, and not thinking about the wider business or economic context of that particular cloud upgrade or new service offering. What does it actually do and what does it mean? Is
Yeah.
often the missing
And
part.
it's what I feel like it's a bit like the evolution of Twitter, before it
Mm,
was X.
yeah.
It used to be an interesting communication tool and platform to be on. And it devolved over a number of years into a shouting match where everybody's shouting about themselves and they say, hey, look
Hmm.
at my thing, look at myself, look at me. And nobody, at the end of the day, and this is going to sound harsh as well, nobody cares about you. People want to know about themselves. They want to know
Yeah.
something interesting for themselves. They want to know that bit of gossip or information or information, something interesting that's going to help them and their day and their workflow. And if it's
Yeah.
not,
Well,
and it's
it's
only
something they
about
can
you,
learn.
yeah,
Definitely.
they don't care about the other
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny though, because I don't think LinkedIn has gone that far yet, but I sometimes go on and I think my feed is so full of quite often self-promotional stuff. And I'm like basically weeding through it to find the things that are really going to nurture my mind. And I think, oh, I've learned something, or that's a really interesting fact, or
Yeah.
and I think it's as either business leaders or also company profiles that are using platforms, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn and X, you really need to think about what are you putting into the community as well as blasting out that's helpful and interesting and digestible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is probably the first and foremost factor that somebody should be considering is not like, how do I do this? How many posts should I get up? It's more like, what's the most impactful type of thing I should even be talking about before I open my mouth? Yeah.
I feel like
So
I need to channel more of that.
yeah, you help your clients do this differently. You help them accelerate trust, visibility during shorter buying cycles, um, especially when they already have some of their top vendors in mind. So,
Mm.
without, I guess, giving away all the secrets, unless you want to, how do you do that?
Well, I think the first point is something we've covered a bit, but that building trust over time, it's the long game. Like, yes, there might be short wins along the way, but it's about being memorable in a way that drives the intent to purchase at the time it matters. So that takes consistent brand messaging. Our data actually showed that over 2/3 of technology buyers say that consistent messaging across all channels is a majorly important factor for them. I think it's also thinking about the full marketing mix and how that messaging is played out, and actually not forgetting the more niche trade media, the podcast, the video, actually the more interactive short sound bites of information that you're putting out, as well as the longer length case studies or product spec information booklets that you're pushing out at your events or on your website. Like, you've got to think about every channel and every touch point with a customer on that journey. And fundamentally though, my one final thought would be, don't be boring. I obviously focus on B2B tech. That's been my whole career for nearly 20 years. I've worked with a lot of clients, and the things that really work are interesting narratives that stand out, are controversial or interesting, spiky enough that it piques the interest without damaging your reputation, and saying something different that adds to the narrative. Because we could all say hacks are on the increase and companies are at risk and they need to be more resilient, but why and how and what's new and interesting that you're adding? So don't
Yeah.
be boring.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people show up and think B2B stands for
Yeah.
boring, comma, too boring.
Ah, yeah.
And that's how
I
they
get it a
post.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you connect with the right clients? How do you meet them? How do they find you? What is your ecosystem for finding these clients and
Mm.
making the right fit so that they know that you're the right fit and you know they're the right fit. So it's a good match.
Sure, it's changed quite a lot. I've probably been more focused on new business for about the last 9, 10 years. So that's been like probably about half to three quarters of my role for that amount of time. And it was a lot more network and who knows you, and recommendations for media and analysts, say 8 years ago. Whereas now that's still important. It probably makes up about 25% of our 30% of our leads that we get. So nurture that network. It's really important. Regular cadence of comms with them, events, putting out social media content that's going to interest them specifically. Those one-to-one coffees, lunches, catch-up calls, etc. That really makes a difference.
Yeah.
But interestingly, we've had probably about, I want to say about 7% of leads from ChatGPT or similar platforms recently. So that's since January. I've been recording it in my HubSpot to see how much it's happening. So SEO is massive. So both for agentic search, but also Google or other search engine search, we put a lot of time and effort into our SEO. So we rank like number 2, 3 for tech PR London or tech PR globally. The way you know this as well as I do, it's feeding the content algorithms. So blog posts, we put out our own podcasts, we've got industry reports. When we're doing an event, we'll do a write-up, but we'll make sure we get some video or some pictures or some client testimonials. Like it's a machine in itself. I guess it's almost, they're saying like eating your own dog food. Like if I can't PR ourselves and market ourselves, then why would other people want to hire us?
I mean, 1,000% that,
Yeah.
because absolutely, it sounds strange, but, sometimes even walking around San Diego where I live, I'll see something called Creative Signs 2, and it's like a sign store, and it's just god awful, right? And you look at it and you're like, who would ever go into a place like that called Creative Signs 2? You couldn't come up with a more creative name for it?
No,
Like,
no.
yeah, so absolutely, you have to PR yourself before you PR other people.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's often the thing at the bottom of the list for PR agencies because you're so busy and you're just focused on clients who are 100% number one priority. But if you've got eyes on the prize for growth, but also being realistic that we've got a strong retention rate, but there's always going to be things out of your control, whether it's .com boom or bust, recessions, COVID, the stuff that you just don't even imagine is going to be on your bingo card for that year. So you have to be filling the pipeline constantly in order to maintain and grow agency revenue levels. But it's nurturing, it's new. And also the team want interesting new work. Like they get excited when we win, like we've just won an amazing like new AI company, and like the buzz in the room of working on that brief and being in the pitch was just next level. Like me, even 20 years on, I still get a buzz from it. I still love it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. In addition, I would say you've talked about being human, right? Because we're humans. Even when you're in B2B, you are a human, and the person on the other end is going to be a human as well. So I think being genuine, being yourself, if you actually love it, oh my gosh, that's so different. And that makes such a big difference from, we can do this because we're really good at it. Well, great. There's no heart there. There's no compassion. And I think if you love what you do that much, that's infectious. That's contagious,
And you see it like more and more. I mean, the team are probably bored of me talking about it, but I'm not an idiot. I've worked at different agencies. There's the number one different agencies globally that can do what we do, even if they're not in this country. So they're buying that. They want people. They want an extension of their team that they like, they respect, they know are going to challenge them at the right moment. And it's people by people. And we can all pretty much on paper have similar media contacts or approach and strategy and ability and services. But if they don't like you or think you are passionate about their area and understand it genuinely, then why would they hire you?
It's a great point. Yeah.
Again, don't be boring.
Right.
It doesn't need to be boring.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you have it dialed in. It sounds like you have a lot of really good growth. If you were to try to 2x, 3x, 5x your company over the next few years, what's the one thing holding you back right now? What's the one thing that you could, if you could snap your fingers, make it disappear, break through that roadblock, how would you grow?
Oh, well, that's a killer question.
Thanks.
Okay, so a big focus for us is the full integrated service offering. So building out our marketing capabilities, because if we did as much on the PR and analysts and content side as we do on the marketing side, I mean, we'd double our business overnight. And I think that for me is one of the big growth areas. Continued, probably new sectors would probably be the second one. Like we've dabbled in fintech and ad tech, retail tech, but kind of it's been quite an ebb and flow market for us. And I think really nailing that would also help kind of stratosphere our growth. I think like many agencies, one of the challenges is often conflicts, particularly. So we work a lot in telco and enterprise tech. And one of those common threads is like the big hyperscalers that talk about all the issues. So it could be HP, it could be AWS or Google, but they won't want you to work with each other. So I'm not alone in that agency challenge of, okay, well, how do we compartmentalize a team that can do this as well as this? Otherwise, we've kind of tapped out that market.
Yeah.
So it's getting over conflict, new sectors, but also expanding our stickiness and our service offering with clients.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we tend to work on what's most urgent. And I think you brought this up earlier.
Yeah.
And I am as guilty of this as anybody else. Last week, I paid a professional ghostwriter, and by the way, I am a professional ghostwriter of over a decade, to look through my LinkedIn and audit, just give me an audit, because I wanted a second pair of eyes. I didn't want him to actually write any content for me, but what I did want him to do is say, hey, how good is my content? And sometimes it's so nice to work with somebody else. And it was nice to get that perspective, because when I wrote up my own LinkedIn, it was actually 3 years ago, unfortunately. And it probably could have used an update since then, and it didn't have it. And I think that a lot of companies do that. They work on, the thing that maybe they do have too many clients, which is a great problem to have. But that means that you're so, nose to the grindstone, working on what is most urgent at the moment, that you forget what's important. And then, like you said, with that bingo card, if something does come up, if you do lose key clients, oh my gosh, how do you pivot? How do you spin from there?
It's stressful. I feel like I'm constantly on a needle point or something, flipping between absolutely smashing it, going really well, and thinking, but what if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if we got ready to roll if we need to pivot? And I think I like to try and keep that off the team. It's definitely me and my CFO is the thing that keeps us up at night, probably. And I want the team to be focused on fantastic client work that makes it, we've got clients that have been with us for 12 years. So we've got that history, that heritage, and people like to stay with us. But I'm always thinking about what's coming down the road, or what could hit us, or how do we grow that, or what if this client gets too big, or this one's too small, how do we build it out? And it's pivoting, but with the team, because I'm one person, I can't service 28 clients on my own. So it's how are we doing this together, and actually what's important to them as much as it is to me and the other founder.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? And bear with me. My daughter and I watched this video of they were like baby voles, like these little, the underground voles, and they're nearly blind, and so they literally have to, like, their nose, I think they'd like hold on to each other's tail. With the other one's teeth, and it's like a cute little line, and everywhere the mom goes, all the little voles behind it have to go, because if they don't, they'll get lost. They're blind and they won't find their way. And it really reminds
like
me.
Kids.
Fair, true that.
Yeah,
absolutely helpless until suddenly they aren't.
and then they're just running off without you.
Yeah. But that kind of teamwork reminds me of that. Of just like, hey, grab onto this tail. I'm here. I will lead you. I will keep you safe from harm.
Yeah. And you might, I don't know if they have it so much in the States, but we're an employee-owned trust. So that means that we are actually owned by our employees. So we made that change last year. So actually their view and opinions and how they want things to be run is even more important than another agency, and being on that journey together of actually, do you know what, if we're B Corp certified, so a client isn't in the right sector or it's not regulated, then we will lose our certification if we work with them, and B, actually it doesn't stand with our values as a team and what we've agreed with the direction that we want to take the company and what is important for us.
That's brilliant. All right. So how do people find you? How could people who are listening or watching this podcast find you and work with you?
So LinkedIn is probably the best route. So it's Jenny with a Y, Mowat, M-O-W-A-T on LinkedIn, or babelpr.com is our website. So you can go through either route. We're pretty hot on both comms.
Fantastic. And all of those links are in the show notes. So go ahead and just look below. You can click twice, click more, and then click the links, and you will find out how to work with Babel and work with Jenny. Thank you so much for your time and expertise. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.